If you were just joining me on stream, we are blessed to have the Drizzle, who is actually I'm not even sure I know what your title is. Lead gameplay designer on Tribes 3? Something like that?
No, I wouldn't call myself a lead. I think with all the projects, Erez will always be the true lead at
Fair
Prophecy.
enough.
But I am for now handling most of the primary decision making. But I'm simply just a game designer in official
Okay.
football.
Game designer on Tribes 3. Awesome.
Yep.
So during all of the playtests, pretty much, except for the one or two where me and APC were traveling, we did these streams at the end of the playtest where we wanted to go through our thoughts on the updates, on where the game is headed, what we think the game needs in the future, our thoughts on the current meta, as well as look at the feedback forum on the main Discord, which those streams ended up being pretty cool. Like, we would always get a lot of interest and viewership. And it's been a while since we've done that, especially obviously the game's been out of early access or into early access, and I have been traveling, blah, 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 blah. But I wanted to try and do that. And I messaged a couple people, and everyone was like too busy or they were traveling or whatever. And then I was like, wait, I'm just going to message the Drizzle because you've been super active in the Discord, the T3 Comp Discord, the main Discord. You've been playing Pugs, and you've even been playing Scrims lately. So I wanted to bring you on to just have a bit of a casual, informal chat so people can get to know you better, and we can talk about the meta, talk about the most recent update. Obviously, we just had one of the biggest patches, period, in terms of like quality of life updates as well. I wanted to, even before we jump into all of that, just start with a little bit about you. So I did have getting all these. You guys are ruining my YouTube VOD, by the way, with all these Twitch notifications, but thank you for the rating party of 10, Britney Spears. Appreciate it. And all the follows, everybody. Thank you. So we're going to just start and learn a little bit about the man himself, Drizzle. Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to a lot of these questions. So I wanted to start with, maybe a little bit of your background as a game developer and game designer. What have you been up to the last couple of years? How long have you been doing this? Yeah, let's start there.
Cool. As with a lot of change in people's life, I switch into this industry begins with COVID. I was working on business finance, first fintech, and then moved into business finance. And I was doing that for a couple of years in San Diego. But as I'm sure everyone is aware, COVID did a number on that industry, at least for a little while. And all of a sudden, I found myself paying a lot of money for very little in return in terms of my apartment down there. So, talked to my boss, told him I was planning on quitting. He offered to fire me so I could collect unemployment. Very cool
Nice.
guy. And I spent that summer with my parents. And then one of my good buddies who worked at High Res asked me if I ever had an interest in it, and I told him, "Hey, of course, I love video games. I would think it's incredible to be a part of that industry." So he got my foot in the door, and through the right mix of luck, hard work, and being noticed by the right people, I got to where I am today.
Awesome. And what does your day-to-day look like at Prophecy? Obviously, you're interacting with the community a ton, you're playing the game a ton, you're taking feedback and bringing it to the game. Do you also write code and actually implement the features? Like, what is the full stack of your kind of day-to-day responsibilities?
That's a really good question. I mean it when I say that I legitimately, and this goes with just our whole team at Prophecy. There's so many amazing people that I work with because my day to day is mostly coming up and mapping out ideas and then using the tools that the programmers have made for me to make things happen. Without the team behind me, literally structuring what can sometimes be a very nebulous,
Yeah.
poorly communicated concept, they make things a reality. They are constantly building systems that I can modify and configure very easily so that I can make sure that our iterations are a simple and ongoing process. Day to day at Prophecy is unlike anywhere I've ever worked. Like I have already stated multiple times, the people are amazing, but just the sheer speed at which we go through from day to day of taking an idea, mapping it out, structuring it, implementing it, and throwing it away, or sometimes like greenlighting it is incredible. And I haven't actually worked at another company that does it quite like it at Prophecy.
So you're telling me that there are developer tools that you're able to access for all of these nuanced physics tweaks? It's not, you're not jumping into the code base directly. Like, you're able to change all of these different variables through tools that they've created. I'm not an engineer, but that sounds pretty. I didn't know that kind of thing was even possible.
Yeah, more or less, that's really it. It's when you boil it down to what I'm actually doing, it makes me seem like a bit more of a simpleton because it can literally be in some situations like enter number here, oh that felt good, enter other number here, oh that felt bad because of. So they're incredible. So they make my job as a designer, which at the end of the day, I think that a designer's true job description is to try to make the game fun. And on my quest towards doing so, I things are just getting easier every day.
Awesome. Cool. What is your past experience in Tribes? I know that you have played some previous Tribes games, or at least one.
I love this question. There's a story that I've told a couple of times, whether in the office, in the official Discord, or the comp Discord. But I actually fell in love with Tribes before I knew what Tribes was, because in Halo 3 there was Forge mode, and Forge mode is like our custom game mutators, and some of those mutators were gravity and movement speed. And my friends and I made a mode that we called SROCs at the time, which stood for Swords and Rockets. And the concept was basically you're moving really fast and there's very low gravity, so you're skiing. And it was the big open sand map in Halo 3. I think it was called, it might have been Sand Trap or Guardian or something, with the elephants were on it. But I digress. The concept was that you'd fly through the air and you'd have to calculate where another player was landing so you could shoot a rocket preemptively to hit them there. And then if you met in the air, you would clash with a sword. And it eventually evolved actually to be gravity hammers and rockets, because the hammers could reflect the rockets back into the player that shot them, which was a cool interaction. And for a little while on Xbox Live, that mode for a week or two was one of the most popular played modes. We did all of that, and then maybe a year later, one of the buddies that I worked on that with and played that with an outrageous amount said, "Hey, there's this game called Tribes Ascend. It's just like Srox." So I got into it, and I thought that game, when I first saw that game, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. Because that personal attachment to the mode in Halo 3 and everything, and just like seeing it like fully fleshed out into a full game. I unfortunately came a little bit late to the party, and I'm sure some of you guys had the privilege of fragging me relentlessly over and over again. And I'm not going to comment on other people's work, but the progression felt like for me to get the next thing I wanted, I would have had to be destroyed too many times for it to be worth it. And I was like, all right, maybe it just wasn't meant to be, and I moved on. But yeah, I have always thought Tribes is a special series since then.
Yeah, me too. I got the Tribes One box back there. I don't think you can probably tell with my tiny little webcam, but let's see, full webcam. There it is.
I can see it.
There it is. Yeah, Tribes has been a big part of my life, and I don't mean that hyperbolically. It's been a really big part of my life since I was 12 years old, and I'm 35 now. I'm an old fucker. So yeah, Tribes is very special. And so you played Tribes Ascend, and so is this your first game dev job at Prophecy?
No, so I joined Prophecy over a year ago. So I had worked on Dead Zone and Raiders before this.
Okay, but so Prophecy is your first gig, and so I guess you were in a way you were working on the Tribes IP the whole time, but those games, I'll be honest, I didn't play them. I'm a bad Tribes fan. I should have played them. I'm sure they were a lot of fun to work on, but what was it? Tribes 3 carries a bit of gravitas behind it, I imagine, especially as someone that played Ascend and really thought that game was great. Like, how did that feel when you were just like, okay, we get to work on Tribes 3? Like, what was the emotion or how did you feel when that decision came through?
I played a role along with Mick. Mick Larkins, who had been interviewed by the community a couple months ago at this point. He's one of the principal engineers, really amazing guy to work with and be around. I've learned more from him than I could even explain in a single hour. But he and we knew there was some pre-existing interest in making it, and we tried to galvanize that idea a little bit. So when it did get greenlit, I was very excited. I had heard rumors about some of the past things with the Tribes community. Enough time had passed that I wouldn't say I was very nervous about that history, which in hindsight,
you should have been.
I was wrong. I was definitely wrong to not be at least a little nervous because I was just so excited. I thought that we had the chance to make something really great. It almost felt, without sounding too cliche, it felt like it for me. It was a long time coming to work on a project like that, just because of where I was as a kid when I was dreaming about game design and making that game in Halo 3 and seeing Tribes Ascend and always wondering what if, and then having it somehow wrap full circle around to working on Tribes 3. I thought that was the most exciting thing possible, and it legitimately was it still is the pinnacle of my career.
That's awesome. Okay, I think that segues to Tribes 3 to date. And obviously, this community, a lot of us have been playing Tribes for our entire adult lives, myself included. 25 years in some cases, 20 years in others, 15 years in others. Even if you started with Tribes Ascend, you played Tribes for a decade. Maybe not the whole time, but through a whole lot of it. We're a passionate group of people. And yes, there is a reputation. I think all hardcore gaming communities can have an element of overly passionate people coming off the wrong way online at times. There is a reputation in the Tribes community for having very strongly held beliefs and potentially being a little rough around the edges, harsh. This legacy goes back all the way to Tribes 2. When the development of Tribes 2, a lot of Tribes 1 players were really unhappy with the direction that game went. It happened in Tribes Vengeance, it happened in Tribes Ascend. But I still fundamentally believe that the vast majority of us 95%, 98% maybe, really just want Tribes to be successful more than anything. And I think most of us want to see Tribes 3 be successful. How do you navigate all of the feedback coming in? Valid feedback, maybe not so valid feedback, harsh or written very gently and carefully. How do you take all that feedback from all different spectrums and collate and pair that up with also staying true to what your vision is for the game? I know it's a big question and I rambled on too long, but yeah, how do you take all that feedback?
I'm a bit of a rambler myself, so don't worry about it. If I ever go on too long, feel free to cut me off. But another good question. I think the process changes based on the project that you're working on. Tribes was very unique in the manner that we went in with a pretty clear and defined mission, and we were very forward facing about that. There's still elements of that that are directly in the game, like the map design on Katabatic, Wave Mist, and this or that. But even throughout that like clear vision, there were a lot of things that we knew we were going to add. So when feedback is coming in, especially in the early alpha phase, and that history of the franchise and where people were at what point is starting to leak into the feedback channel, there's a measure of, okay, here's where our pillar is going forward. Then to my left and to my right, there's these things that I know that I want, but those are going to have to come when we get a little bit more of a clearer picture. And then there's the spectrum of feedback, which is a 360-degree scope that some guy it will be saying, hey, on week 3 of the project, how is VGS not in the game? These guys are fools. They don't know what they're doing. And something like that. It's like, all right, we're going to put VGS in, but we're still trying to figure out like how much gravity we need in the world, or we're still trying to figure out like what the movement gap between light, medium, and heavy is supposed to look like, and we're still trying to implement the chain gun. So then we put like a staple of VGS in for the meantime, and it's not suitable. Rinse, repeat. Aside from that cycle, which kind of happened with Tribes, the one thing that is like my North Star for looking at feedback is the first and earliest lesson I learned as a designer in the gaming industry, which is that despite how harsh the criticism is, despite how much you disagree, and despite how, because there are objective wrongs, despite how wrong it is, there is a shred of reality or truth that is making that feedback real to the person. And our goals as designers when looking at feedback is to find that thread and explore it. And there was a period of time where those threads weren't quite worth exploring because we were moving so fast and still trying to get our legs under us. But then you can probably just get a calendar out and know the exact day. But one of our patches, the feedback or the communication cycle from devs to the community improved a lot. And that was because the game had reached a point where it's like, all right, we have a playable product here Now we need to straighten out some of the details. And that's where I started seeking those threads and looking for those answers and speaking with you guys more and more. And at risk of making my answer far too superfluous, we get to where we are now. And right now, I have a pretty good sense of who you guys are. You guys have a pretty good sense of who I am. And I think it's really amazing that we've cultivated this relationship where I can either get in the comp server or the official server or a Twitch call with you, and we can talk openly about this stuff, and I can say no or yes, or you can say no or yes, and there's respect on both sides.
I actually want to put you on the spot a little bit. I have a dual-sided question. What are some of the major gameplay decisions that were made early on that you have come to regret? And what are some of the major gameplay decisions you made early on that maybe people didn't agree with that you feel somewhat vindicated in?
Oh wow, that's a really
Sorry,
good
that's a really tough question. I'm just poning you with that
that's a
one.
really good one. I would say the thing that like currently I probably regret the most is I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I'm going to speak purely within the realm of my own decisions. I don't think I was looking very holistically at the chain gun at the time of its nerf, and I saw it being used to great effect, and I was certainly a major player for why it is where it is now. And I've very openly expressed that I currently do not think the chain gun is as good as it should be, and I also am too afraid to touch it because of where we were in the past. And I wish that I had just been smarter and known a little bit more about like how the chain gun's supposed to be used before I made the call that I did. The thing that I'm most vindicated on, there's a couple of good ones, but I would say, is the vindication coming internally or with the community, or does it not matter for the sake of the
Your
question?
choice, dealer's choice.
All right. I would say internally, we were reaching a point where the game was actually feeling really good. We still actually, you know what? This answer goes both ways because there's plenty in the community that didn't like this. But we were reaching a point where the game was feeling really good in Steam Next Fest. I think everyone pretty much agreed that was a solid build. Movement seemed to be down, it seemed to be fluid, it seemed to be working. The baseline was like at a point where we could safely iterate on it, where people would understand the reasoning behind the decisions we were making and they could visualize and feel the effects of those decisions in game. And then right after that, the very next weekend, we make it so that the jetpack dampening no longer occurs except for your z-axis speed, which changed the game and all of our measurements and how the movement felt pretty much entirely. And there were people that still play the game now that's after that change, they're like, oh, this is hopeless, this feels awful. Some people thought it felt better but too strong, and ultimately like there was a large sentiment of this is the right direction, but it's not good yet, amongst like people questioning where we are like internally, because again we started feeling really good during Next Fest, and then the community saying, oh, like they ruined the movement that I came to like during Next Fest. I don't know if I can ever play the game anymore. I look at that decision and I think that the movement, I'm so happy with where the movement is, and I would not be feeling that way unless that decision was made. And it took some iteration, minor tweaks here and there, but we got it. And I think right now Tribes 3 has that really seamless gliding movement that we had been striving for since the onset of the project. And it's thanks, and I'm not going to take credit for the idea because the idea wasn't mine. The idea was actually something that was parroted throughout the community and some people internally. I was just the one that said, hey, it's time to make the shot call on this like right now, because when we do this, it's going to change things, it's going to screw things up, and we're going to have some iteration to do. So that's the one that I feel the most vindicated about and the safest in my choice to lobby on.
All right. Okay. I'm curious, are there any kind of common misconceptions that the community might have about how game development is done at Prophecy, or just like in general? Is there anything you want to clear the air on maybe a little bit? And I did not see these questions with Drizzle beforehand, by the way. He is getting completely blindsided by these.
Yeah, I think one thing that should be stated is got memed on when we made the claim that like we move faster than anyone in the industry. That it's true.
I've never seen game developers iterating this freaking fast, especially during the early playtest. That was insane.
Yeah, it's the capabilities of this team are just insane. So that is all true, and I also think this is a good opportunity to just say that a lot of times people label, oh, especially during the project before it was released, it's, this is a pump and dump, this is an asset flip. It absolutely wasn't. Anytime that you heard we're working on this game because we like it was absolute authenticity. And the game in its current state is a product of that. It wasn't just hey, let's asset flip these and try to make a quick buck. And people are always going to think one thing or another, but whether we succeed or fail, this project was something that we took great care to try to make one of the things that we spoke about early on. It was, hey, tribes had some problems in the past, let's look at it through a modern lens and try to solve them. Not all of those experiments worked. Not all of those experiments were fun. Not all of those experiments helped the game, but plenty of them are still in the game now, and I do think they solve some of the problems of earlier tribes, whereas some of the others still remain. But that's a different conversation.
Okay, I'm just looking at my at the time and realizing we've already been going for 40 minutes, and I don't know, how long do you have? I don't want to. I know it's later on the East Coast. I'm here on the West Coast. Should we kick it up a notch? I don't want to keep you too late tonight because we have. I feel like getting into the current balance, we could be another hour and a half at least, easily.
Yeah, realistically, I'd like to be in bed before 12, but
That's fine.
I'm not scrambling to get away.
Yeah. Also, like the part where we look at community feedback in the forums, like I can bring somebody else on for that. Like we'll get as far as we need to get. I am curious though, like what are your goals with the remainder of early access here? By assuming that there's going to be at the end of the timeline that was provided, there's going to be some sort of launch. What are your goals from a gameplay perspective in terms of where you want to see this game get to by the end of this early access period?
The answer to this question changes what feels like weekly to me. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, it was focused on content, whereas right now it's focused on I want to see some of these problems fixed that are in the game. I really don't like the reloading issue. I really don't like that right now players are turning invisible. I really don't like some of the issues where audio's cutting out at weird times. Things like that are heavily on my radar, because I think right now, more or less, the game is in a pretty good state balance-wise, and we just had a really solid drop of content, and it's just time to straighten out a couple things. We have the Moonrise patch that's on the horizon. I don't know when the next patch is going to be, if we do one before that. I think it would be nice. We're only limited to what we're capable of putting out at a time, and truth be told, it's like we dumped a lot of stuff into that last patch as like a, hey, early access, we're taking this seriously, boom, here's a bunch of content, let's see how it affects the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see where things go, but right now my mind is heavily set on I would like to see some of these bugs fixed.
Yeah, I'm sure I can speak for pretty much anyone or everyone when I share some frustration about the reloading issue that has, I swear every single time I go try and kill somebody's generator and I turn around to pull out my shotgun, it just doesn't reload, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So that's one I definitely want to see prioritized for bug fixing. Okay, let's get to this current patch and talking about the state of the game as it stands right now. This last update, as we talked about, had a bunch of content. Obviously, Honor Ball is back, which curious to hear your thoughts on how that came to be after it was told we were told that wasn't going to happen. So Honor Ball is back. We got the plasma. We got the force fields. We also got a ton of community favorite requests. Personally, my favorite is the new flag physics. By far, the most exciting thing in this patch for me was the changes to flag inheritance and flag tossing strength, and just feels really awesome. Shotgun getting nerfed. I think the quicker respawn was at the top of everyone's lists. We also got some ones that I think were very controversial, like the force field. What are your thoughts on how this patch landed? I know we talked about some of the major bugs that are in the patch, but the bugs aside, what are your thoughts on how this current patch landed and where we go from here?
I'm really happy. I don't think it's a secret that I joke about it sometimes, but it's no secret that a lot of the content that was in the patch wasn't just organic ideas. It was, hey, let's focus on delivering on these things, the easy wins, the things that would just make the game an overall better experience that a majority of players already want. I knew what was going into the patch a long time ago. And if Freakazoid's watching this, I apologize, dude. When I had you collecting all those stats, I already knew Honor Ball was going back in. So it was, I wanted to build a little bit of hype around it. I wanted people to be feeling like, hey, these are the things we want. Are they going to deliver? When I certainly already had an idea that we were. And I think it worked out. So I'm really happy with how this landed. I'm happy with the public reaction. I saw a lot of really positive notes from ranging from players all the way on the comp side to all the way on the fully casual side, which was just cool to see. It pretty unanimously well received. So I'm happy with that. You guys provided really great feedback. You gave us plenty of reason to add all those things. Happy that we could support it.
Awesome. And this one is one that I'm personally super stoked about. You actually have started playing pickup games in the T3 Comp Discord server in the 7v7 community. I know you've said, at least privately, I think publicly as well, that you love this game as a 7v7 game the most. You actually prefer to play it in the 7v7. So first of all, how fucking cool is it that we have a dev who's playing competitive in the game? Not just like decently high level player, but actually playing competitive. That's super cool. But actually, 1 or 2 nights ago, you were playing LD Chase in mixers against the best team in the game, hands down the best team in the game, no question, T+. They're monsters. No one can beat them. And you were brave enough to jump in and play mixers against them. What was it like playing against Jagel, Stork, etc.? And any big surprises that came from that? How did it make you rethink the balance of the game playing against that ridiculous team?
This is just such a fun question to answer. Yeah, first I'll just start off saying thanks to the guys who hosted me, right? Because you say I played in the game. It was more like I participated. I had some cool moments here and there, but mostly, it's my team would have been better with a true LD on their team. But no, I mean, it was a really great time playing against T+.
Brittany's saying you did really good. I don't know. I was
Oh,
watching.
well,
I was listening in, and I kept hearing you like get returns and stuff.
oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
I do play the game, so it's not like I'm useless, but I sure wasn't a high performer. But here's what I'll say about T plus. First of all, those guys are incredible players. I know it's a meme to be like, oh, Jagel's this, Evil's that, one thing or another about all those guys, but they are incredible players, and they're all very good. I knew that they were probably going to win.
I'd say so. Versus a random mix, yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty lucky to share a team with some really cool people like Brittany and Wriggles and sorry, I forgot his username. It's Unstable and Trubba. And, like all those guys were really cool and super supportive and really fun to play with. But like the general sentiment is like, hey, let's have fun and play against this good team. And I've played against Stork, I've played against Evil, I've played against Jagel, all these guys. And the first thing that became extremely evident to me was how unseriously they take pubs.
Oh,
Because I beat those guys in duels in pubs. Plenty of times I beat them in duels in pubs. But when they turn it on, it's just completely different. It was running into a brick wall, quite literally, like trying to chase into their stacks, flying at 275, 300 kilometers an hour, and like getting just ritualistically mid-aired by all of them. I didn't really understand how high above me they were in terms of skill until I played that, and it unlocked a much new level of respect for, in fact, all of you guys in the competitive community. I think that was it's awesome what you guys are doing. So they've really impressed me. They deserve the praise they get. But how does it impact like my ideas on balance and stuff is a whole other thing, because one thing that is very important for me to do with my job on this game is, because I enjoy the game to the degree that I do, because I like playing the game and I do play the game, and because I work on the game, I have to be very careful of these moments where when I was in that match, when you have so many talented players all playing heavy and none of them playing medium, my first thought is, oh, maybe heavy's overpowered, maybe medium's underpowered. And now that might just be a team thing, but I was really thinking, oh man, the heavy class is just way too good, way too good, way too good. But and that may be true, right? When you collate all the evidence and all the data and you look at this, it's like, oh, is heavy offense or whatever overpowered? Maybe. But using that moment of, oh, Jagel, Evil, Matt and whoever else is playing heavy to turtle with the flag and dominating me actually isn't evidence of the heavy being overpowered. Those players are just really good and in a caliber of which you have to consider that. When I was playing that, I tried to just remove myself from the whole, okay, I shouldn't be looking really at balance right now. These are lopsided teams. We're just a random mixer against one of the best teams in NA, or the considered best team in NA. So I'm just play the game and try to have fun. I'll look for balance more when the teams are less stacked.
All right. Okay. Okay. That's not what I wanted to hear. What I wanted to hear is Heavy's OP. It's getting the nerf. I've got a VOD on my stream right now from a couple of patches ago. I just like playing medium on just a personal level. I don't really want to be playing heavy, but right now I feel like I'm not really doing my team a full service if I'm playing as medium armor when heavy is like 70% as mobile. But anyway, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Did you have fun? You guys got. I didn't get a chance to watch every. I saw that you had some. It's not like you're getting capped out like 5-0, but I'm assuming it was rough. Hopefully, it was fun.
Yeah, it was a really good time. The unfun part is just in their consistency. It's like
Yeah.
you find yourself as a player who's like worse than them. It's like, all right, one of these times I'm going to crash them and they're going to mess up their energy management. They're not going to hit it midair on my way in. They're not going to do this, but they just do. And they executed well. And I said to my team on mic multiple times, yeah, these guys just aim really well. They just aim really well. Now, it goes without saying that I don't know the callouts as well as you guys, and I wasn't communicating as well as I should, so I was just going rogue and trying to play a little bit more dynamically than I should have. But yeah, no, all in all, super great time. I love 7-on-7. I think it's pubs are amazing, but 7-on-7 for me is like the pure way to play.
Cool. Yeah. The few times that I've played in mixers versus T plus, like once or twice, we got so smashed it was embarrassing. A lot of maps lasting less than 6 or 7 minutes. But there's two things. First of all, for me, I don't mind getting smashed as long as I'm like learning and improving, which I felt, is going to be the case. Some people are like, "Oh, you can't even learn when you're getting beat that bad." I'm like, I disagree. Like, it's teaching me to be a better dueler. If Jagel's going to mid-air me
Right.
in the split second that he sees me, then I'm going to have better habits. And if anything, playing a pug with like lower level players, like maybe could teach bad habits. So first of all, I'm learning, which I like. Second of
Yep.
all, losing against T plus, there's no shame in that. You kind of, if it was like a lower, if it wasn't quite as good of a team, then you're like, God, we should have won that. But when you lose against T plus, you're just like, yeah,
Yep. Yep.
teaches you
And
sneak
like I
skill.
said,
Yeah.
we did expect to lose, but it was still a good time. And hey, you know what? If anyone's curious, go and watch Stork's VOD of Rain Dance. We were winning for almost the entire match, but then they straightened up and ironed us out.
There you go. So we could jump. This is the part of the show where I would usually start looking at forum posts and reviewing people's feedback. I think if we start down that path, we could go for hours, and I don't want to keep you up too late. I guess I'll end with maybe one or two last questions. Are there any kind of high priority balance updates that you think you do want to focus on for this next?
I'm looking at a few things. Like it's I'm in a interesting spot with balance because a few reasons. First, I do understand that the heavy has some things going for it that maybe it shouldn't. I don't necessarily think those things are the force field, for what it's worth. I think the force field is in a pretty good spot. However, it's still new, and I am still fully in the wait and see boat. Heavy might be a little too good, but really my concern isn't that. When it comes to like balance and gameplay, I'm thinking about the next packs and items that we have on the plate and how that's going to affect it. And so, without spoiling too much, I'm trying to have some foresight with the decisions that I make now. Because if I overcommit on something and then add in one of these tools or elements that were more or less designed to help with that thing that I'd be nerfing, then it could just be overboard and it could hurt what the original idea was. Things do, again, they do seem to be in a pretty good spot. Whether medium gets a buff or heavy gets a little nerf is TBD. But my big ticket item is counterplay.
Interesting. Counterplay. I guess we can all intuit what we think that means. And I like that we're in the phase of the game now where, don't get me wrong, I think it was the right move in the playtests to make wild kind of shifts in balance. for instance, changing physics or inheritance or disk speeds or whatever. That playtest is where you should do that. I like that we're in this phase where we're going to increase gravity by 1.6%.
Yeah.
And we're gonna decrease the damage of the shotgun by 15% instead of wildly shifting things. So I don't think, yeah, I agree that the balance feels fairly good. For me, the main thing right now is heavy armor, but that's just my personal opinion. I like how, by the way, all the T plus guys were like, I actually think this patch was a nerf to heavy armor, yet they played like 4 or 5 heavies on every map. I'm like, okay, put your money
Yeah.
where your mouth is, guys, if that's what you think. But shoot, what was my last question? Oh yeah, I remember. Of course, you have to throw these in. I'm legally obligated to, as a community member. Any teasers or hints that you can throw at us for anything that we might be excited about for the future?
Okay, yeah. Obviously, you guys want maps. Moonrise is going to be a map, and what I'll tell you right now about it is that it's going to be roughly Rain Dance size. So it will be a bigger map. In terms of abilities, I'll tell you that there's an ability was basically completely ready and just barely didn't make it into the build, which is the Jammer Pack.
Oh, jammer pack, like sensor jammer kind of thing.
Yeah, and basically what it's gonna I'll just tell you guys what it's gonna do because
Oh snap,
it's
we're
so
getting
close.
leaks.
The Jammer Pack is basically it's going to be on the light armor,
Okay.
and it's going to be in an area around the light for a little while after he activates it. He and teammates within that area around him will not have their IFFs,
Okay. Okay. Cool. And I assume maybe not also show up on the sensor on the radar.
which would also
Yeah.
and they wouldn't show up on the sensor. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I never once used the jammer pack in Tribes 1. Like I always forgot that it existed, but it was used early on, I would say. Okay, cool. Thank you. And thank you for the hot, fresh leaks.
Yeah. No, the goal of it is there's two things. It's so that you can again, when I say I just had the game yesterday against T Plus and was like, "Oh, I'm going to spin up a pack to counter that." But for a light defense to stealthily swing behind turtling defense, it'll work, and it'll also work for somebody who wants to try and gauge the little stay-at-home sniper role a little bit more without people lobbing mortars at them or sniping them with discs from afar. So you'll be able to hypothetically line up a higher percentage shot without players basically having a preview of where you are.
All right. Very cool. Any last words that you want to share with the community about the game, balance, whatever?
Yeah, I just hope that the current state of the game right now is just for you guys. You understand that we appreciate your passion. I know it hasn't seemed like that at times, but the truth is, it's like this game, it had some lumps, and I think it's in a really good spot, and that's obviously because of tremendous effort on both sides. And you guys deserve an applause for that. I have really liked the relationship that the community and myself have been able to cultivate, and I hope that it can be ongoing.
Awesome. Awesome. That was Drizzle. Thank you so much for joining us. It was fun to do this little interview. I wanted to go in and look at forum posts and talk even more about balance, but I think we should let you go. You got a busy work week ahead of you coming up. It's Sunday night, and it's already pretty damn late over there on the East Coast, and we got more patches coming. So I'm sure you got plenty of things to put your head against the pillow and get to it tomorrow. So thank you very much for joining us, Drizzle. Guys, Drizzle is really hardworking, really gives a shit about this community, and I think we're very lucky to have him. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Pleasure to be here. Good talking with you,
Cool.
Fish.
All right. Take it easy. Cool. Thanks for joining me, guys. What do you guys think about this patch? Dave, instead of just doing overall vibes, what are maybe some overall vibes, but what do you think are the high priority things that you would want to see tweaked for future patches?
Okay. In terms of like overall gameplay, I feel like giving heavy Nobicult was a kerfuffle, I guess you say. I feel like it didn't quite necessarily need it. Barrow is still a good option if you're looking for shit damage like that. And shotgun kind of forced them to play a little closer range. They wanted to be deadly like that.
Yeah,
I mean, they move predictably. And a good Nobicult can take out a light in 6 shots and an easy ground pound. You know what I mean? It's not hard to take out a light with the Nobicult and the Spin Fuser from a heavy.
Yeah, I'm definitely whether we'll see what comes in the next patch, but I feel like this patch is a massive buff for heavy armor. I think even just putting the Nova Cult in the third slot is a major buff. I know J Goal and some other people felt like, oh, I still think shotgun is stronger, even though shotgun has been nerfed substantially in this patch. I know some people still feel like that, but to me, the Nova Cult just gives you so much more range that you can work with, and you can basically play heavy armor like in midfield and just be so strong. But I guess Brittany, as the capper, like, how has it been dealing with force field so far?
I think force field is good. I think we needed some way to stop the flag getting out so much, because flags get out post force field. They still get out a lot, but they get out less. Like, I find myself being stopped by it, and I think this is overall good, even though it doesn't feel good for a capper to be stopped. I think that as a capper, excuse me, you have a higher likelihood of dunking. And for me as a capper, like, dunking is the feeling. Like, that's what I want. I want to grab the flag, I want to bring it back, and I want to smash it into our flag. You know what I mean? So I like that. My only thing with the force field is its visibility. Sometimes I don't even realize it's up because visibility is low. But
Yeah.
if I
That's like a
recall
quality of
correctly,
life
that's
thing.
yeah. But the thing too is that, like, I've started putting, I think the way, like, the meta way to self clear force field right now is you put discs on it en route at your peaks, and you leave it one disc when you approach, so that you can one disc it. They don't have enough time to put another one up.
They can also just recall and reset their cooldowns. That is one thing that I think
Yeah.
people are going to realize pretty fast with the force field is recalling now takes 2 seconds, and especially on maps where the spawn points are pretty close, it's pretty easy to get it right back up.
Yeah, and DJing at a spawn, heavy can just DJ over. Yeah. But I think for me, honestly, like, I do think heavy's a little overpowered. I think that maybe the flag passing is a little bit overtuned. I think that we might see a meta emerge where you literally just grab the flag and throw it back to base, because you'll be able to cap faster. Give teams a month with these flag physics. I know we've already been playing with it, right? Just chucking it. So that might be a little bit overtuned, but personally, I would be more than happy if nothing besides, like, visibility of the force field changed, and then we just got a massive bug bash patch.
Yeah.
That's how I'm feeling. Like, I focus on the, if it were up to me to make priorities, I would be like, bug bash, because we need to figure out the no red. We need to not pass through flags, and we need some of the bugs introduced in this patch to be fixed. Those are probably easier fixes than the no regs and the flag pass throughs, but that stuff can really break this game competitively sometimes.
The one that kills me is the gun jamming, is what some people are calling it, when you swap weapons. That one literally tilts me. I've had so many situations where I'm killing a generator, and I think it's related to throwing grenades and then swapping weapons, because it always seems to happen to me when I'm shooting a generator, throwing both of my grenades, and then somebody comes behind me and I try to swap to my shotgun and to kill them, and then I just can't shoot, and I'm like, oh, cool. For me, I feel like the force field has a lot of HP. You have to really hammer that thing to take it down. And I think it's a really positive thing that generators are more important because of the force field, because I think, frankly, the generator play has never been more impactful and more central to the, like, we're in pugs and scrims, people are focusing a lot on the generator now, and if your generator goes down, you're repairing it, which I think is a healthy good thing for the game, and I like to see that. I don't think force fields are wildly overpowered, but I'd like to see their HP get decreased maybe by 10 to 20%. And I don't, honestly, I'd also like to see the damage decrease by 10 to 20%, but nothing.
Yeah, I also wonder if HP would be less of a problem if there was a universal cooldown and you couldn't replace them. Do you know what I mean? Because you can replace it right now, if I recall correctly. So that's, like, kind of the problem with getting it low before you come in. Like, they could just replace it before I get there, or the cooldown it could be a shorter cooldown that starts when it's destroyed.
In Oceania, we're on the borderline of banning force fields. We reckon that OP. It's 800 damage to a light going through it. So if you can even just tickle the cappers coming in, and if they can't clear it, then they're gone. And it's so quick to replace, and the HP of the actual force field so high that, yeah, in Oceania, the Kappas were already having a hard enough time as it was. This is just pushing them over the edge, and people just don't even want to cap anymore.
How has Nate been doing with it? Because I
He
wonder.
hasn't been around. We
Oh,
had
he hasn't?
Scrims
Okay.
last night, and even though Dodger's team was wrecking everyone as they always do, they were doing that without Nate. So yeah, hardcore. He's easily the best blink capper in Oceania at the moment, and so we weren't seeing as much blink play, I think, last night that I recall. But yeah, so I don't know. I can't speak for Nate, but he wasn't getting through. But the rest of it, certainly on our clan, our cappers were really struggling with it, and on the other side they were as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
I'm thinking we actually go look at the feedback forum and just look at a couple of these posts here and start going through some of the top ones. So if you do want us to look at your feedback forum posts, make sure to bump them up and give them an upvote. Mostly looking at the ones with the most votes and comments. Force fields, obviously, highly controversial and a lot of opinions there. Of course, the Epi guys are like, force fields are great. We love them. Epi, of course, has a reputation dating all the way back from Tribes Ascend to playing very defensive-oriented strategies. And then us as cappers, whiny cappers are like, force fields OP. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. And this is actually something that I wanted to give Drizzle a shout out for, because he mentioned, guys, if there's like a lot of debate on both sides of a certain balance issue, that probably means it's fairly balanced, because there is a lot of debate on both sides right now. One, that force fields are totally fine as they are. There is counterplay, just destroy the generator lol, just kill the Hoff lol. And then on our side of just my side of as a capper or as an O player, even I've actually been playing much more clear and distract than I have cap over the last couple of days with this force field patch. And I also dislike it as a clearer because I have to use like so much of my utility just to try and kill it. I'm throwing both nades on the stand. I'm disking it. I'm hot swapping to grenades, and it's still not dead. So that's my take. Yeah.
I think I agree more with the idea of having lower HP, and the way that hearing you as having primarily played with clear this patch being like, it even feels hard for me as like a more DPS class than light to take it down. I think that is good feedback. And then I was also thinking that like it would be way more interesting counterplay to take a perspective that Drizzle was using earlier if they had to time the placement correctly, right? You can't just, because at the moment you can just throw that thing down and leave it there and it's fine. But
You mean have like an expiry kind of like the dome?
no, just lower HP. I don't think it should go down for free. So there's two things here. I think there's another thing in here too, which is at least in comp, generators shouldn't repair themselves. In my opinion, if you don't repair your gen, it should be down. And I think that force field exacerbates that problem because you get your gen back up in 3 minutes for free. But what I'm thinking is instead of something I can just put up and set it and forget it, if it has let's say 400 HP, you have to place it as a capper's coming in, because currently it does not require any skill whatsoever to block a capper with a force field. There is no skill besides figuring out where to put it. And I think it would be way more interesting for.
Because if you're going to use it as a defense, if you're going to use it as a defense against blink, you need to place it on the exit, right? You can't just set it and forget it, because if the capper knows what they're doing, they'll just come around the other side.
Yeah, but take a map like DX, for example.
Yeah, fair enough.
You can just set it. I mean, a lot of maps, if you can deny an entire angle or two by setting it and forgetting it. And then at that point, you funnel the capper into a certain route. And at that point, where you can hunt, you know what I mean? I think it's still pretty powerful to set it and forget it, even if you're not getting the stop, even if you're forcing the capper to do a certain side or route. I think that's still pretty powerful. And as a capper, I'm very interested in counterplay with the Hoff, which is timing based. I think that's really cool counterplay and like metagame that can exist between the capper and the Hoff.
Yeah, I tend to agree. If the sensor or if the force field was just easier to kill, then it's your damn fault for leaving it up and taking 800 damage. And it's going to require more thoughtful use of it, but it's also going to enable coordinated offenses to get rid of it. So I think that's good. I think we should move on though, because I want to jump through
Yeah.
more of these threads. 12v12 is not going to work out in the long run. Feels dead. Am I crazy? Does 12v12 really feel dead? It does not feel dead to me at all in pubs. Obviously, Dangerous Crossing 12v12 certainly doesn't feel dead. But even the biggest maps in the game, 12v12 still feels chaotic and a clusterfuck to me. I don't know. Do you guys feel like 12v12 is
I think
too
12v12 is working
sparse?
just fine. No, it's good. The maps aren't that big for 12v12 to feel like a pub 7v7, right? I honestly haven't even felt that much of a difference going down to 12s. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think it works well.
I think a lot of people are saying, like, why not go to 14v14? Sure, I'm down to try it. But I'm enjoying 12v12 more than I ever enjoyed 16v16. And that
again,
might be
like
because
with
I
the
actually have
yeah,
frames, which is nice.
that's a big thing. And over here, in strange hours of the day, you get less bots, right? And I'm hoping everyone agrees the bots aren't great. Being able to play a game with less of those dudes running around is a good thing for me.
Okay. Could we please see some changes to the sensor? Only show enemies on your half of the map. Always show friendlies, even if it's down. Yeah, I certainly agree with this. I don't think you should be able to know what side the capper spawned if your sensor's up. I don't know,
Yeah, I
Wriggles,
mean,
like as a Chase D player, are you constantly looking at the sensor like to see even as early as the spawning of cappers and starting to use that to do route camping and things like that?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, the answer is yes. I know the answer is yes, but yeah.
I've even working out now where like I'm deep hunting and then recalling before they're like 10-second mark. I'm always on stand, so like defense got a huge buff overall, and chase is going to be a little more hunty if played right. You can push way out, and then if your mini map's up, you can just sit there and watch the mini map for their like 10-second mark, recall, and be at the stand.
Seems pretty
yeah,
uncontroversial.
it also like it seems like there's not a lot of there are options. I actually reached out to Evil after the T plus scrim to be like, hey, is there anything that I could have been doing better while you were like wrecking me, hunting me? And he was like, I don't really know. And it
Yeah.
feels bad. It feels bad as a capper to be like, I can't even run. I worked at a dry dock, some dry dock routes that was like invisible except for a single second from the stand of the enemy side. And it doesn't really matter. I don't have any agency over getting to the flag in a sneaky manner, which feels good.
Okay. Let's move on to my post. Give medium armor Nova Cult in third weapon slot. This one was more controversial than I thought it would be. I don't really get why anyone would be against this personally. I just think it makes logical sense if heavy armor is going to get it in the third slot, that medium armor should also get it in the third slot. It makes sense to me that like hit scanny, bullety weapons would all be in your third slot, and then like grenadey secondary weapons would be in your second slot. I think this alone would make medium armor much more viable compared to heavy armor. I still think heavy armor is going to be the better choice in many situations, but medium armor's kind of identity is, hey, I'm a chunky guy that can duel, but I'm also more mobile. So why not give that chunky guy who can duel the ability to hit shots at a medium range? And I think medium armor just needs the love right now. You could also just say buff the Sparrow, because frankly, the Sparrow is underpowered right now. I was thinking about making a thread about that as well. I think giving the Sparrow back a 15 shot clip, which it had a couple of patches ago, would make it a lot more viable. But right now, like the Nova Cult is just so much better than the Sparrow in basically all situations. I don't know. Any thoughts on this one?
I've actually been preferring running myself, especially like in pub games. I run grenade launcher, disc launcher, Sparrow, and I feel like the Sparrow does actually have better DPS than the Nova Cult. It's just you have to have that aim dialed in. It's easier to dial in multiple shots over one tick shots. And it doesn't do terrible damage. At range, yes, but close up, you're doing 50 to 60 damage a tick.
I don't
Quite a
think the
bit of
Sparrow
damage.
is like wildly underpowered or anything. I think
No.
it's just
I do
not the
agree. Like
best.
a three bullet extension to back to what it was. It might be a good way to move it because I don't feel like it really needs a damage upgrade, just clip size. So I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I like Fire's observation too that it's confusing on heavy to press 3 for your Nova Colt and 2 on medium for the Nova Colt.
I just don't use the Nova Colt on medium because grenade launcher is so strong. And I think we've debated many times in previous patches that the Nova Colt needs, or the grenade launcher needs a nerf. But I think right now, given medium just not being as strong as other classes, I think a medium armor with disc launcher, grenade launcher, Nova would be a lot of fun, and I would really enjoy it. So please give it to me. Thank you.
I think it would be a nice balance change because Nova Colts are hella easy to hit on the heavies, as is. So it would be like a medium.
That's a good point.
So do you think
Thanks
the
for the
Nova Colt
follow.
still belongs on the heavy, or is that too much?
I'd say rather than nerfing somebody again, it's easier to buff to bring balance than it is generally. But I think overall chain, like light chain, and then I think medium chain's in a good spot, but light chain needs a little bit of a damage buff, in my opinion, too. Because I can sit there and chain half my entire clip into a heavy and still only have half my chain left. You're still not dead. Because 35 damage a tick, I feel like I'm hitting him more than that.
Bro, I don't want Stork to route camp me any harder than he's already route camping me. That's a terrifying thought.
Yeah,
Right.
it is.
It's like how Drizzle was saying earlier, like chain's not where it can be stronger. And I feel like in some cases it does. Yes, Stork is the anomaly.
Yeah.
But
route camping is so strong right now though, and that's like a giant buff. Like when I think about that, like the only thing I think about is how much of a buff to route camping it is, and that's going to feel so bad as a capper. I don't disagree that chain is like not, it could do more damage in other situations, but you don't have to do that much damage to, especially with the force field now, to pretty much ruin a capper's route.
Yeah, I like I said earlier with Drizzle, I'm glad we're in a place where we're buffing things by 2% or 5%. Because, yeah, if you overbuff chain, then the game becomes really shit really fast. So if we're going to buff light chain, let's buff it by a small amount and see how that goes.
Yeah, and this is relevant to the conversation, but like maybe a little bit of a divergence. So we don't want to go too far down this hole. But I also think in terms of making medium relevant, could potentially remove flag drag from medium and only keep it for heavy. And I think that would, I knew I knew you'd be super into that, Fish. But I think that could also be a way to, without changing the DPS balance of the game, if they don't want to do that, you could make medium a lot more viable in that manner. Let them be a threat to grab the flag, and people might play medium more.
Dude, I would be so happy. I used to medium cap exclusively before flag drag and also before the changes to not exclusively, but I used to medium cap as a main before they changed the shield pack as well. And I think it was a bit too strong. I think the changes to the shield pack help a little bit. If you completely remove flag drag, I think medium capping suddenly becomes extremely viable on especially maps like Katabatic, which is where I used to run it all the time to really great effect. But honestly, I'm just so over flag drag. I just think it's just unfun and just feels really bad. But that's a whole nother conversation that Drizzle is very aware of my opinion on. Shout outs to Drizzle, who knows how much I love flag drag. But yeah, for me, I would like to see that though, because it gives you more options, more ways to play the game. And I think if you give people more viable strategies, then the game just becomes more dynamic and interesting, and teams can show their own unique strategies versus oh, there's only really one way to play. You blink cap or you're throwing. Like, I'm glad that even like thrust is viable on some maps, but I think giving people more tools is good. And then yeah, look, if you're being route camped by Stork way too much, maybe and we remove flag drag, then suddenly medium capping becomes like something that's way more interesting to do because you can actually just dual Stork and kill him and continue on your route.
Yeah.
Drizzle's still in chat. Hey, go to sleep. No, you can hang out. You're cool.
You could also potentially even, I don't know, what is the speed cap on medium now?
Yeah, right. There is still a speed cap on medium, and I'm not sure, what did it get bumped to? 180 or 200?
Dude, if I think so, I think another thing here is that at least in competitive, probably in pubs as well, Chase has gotten significantly better than it used to. I can't do those tricky, slow understand grabs anymore because I just get chased down immediately. I think that medium capping would be a very different story at this point with the way Chase is. Like I think that if Chase can't catch a medium going 200, then that medium deserves to get home with a flag.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's move on. I thought this one was really resonated with me. Gen room needs to be bigger to allow for better indoor combat. For me, Tribes has never really been a game about indoor combat. If you want to play a game with indoor combat, play Quake, right? Like, Tribes has never had that great movement when you're not skiing. And don't get me wrong, I used to play Arena in Tribes 1. Arena Under the Hill is a legendary map. I fucking love that map. But if I want to play like tight corridors gameplay, I'm most likely going to play Quake. Nonetheless, every single gen room in this entire game feels like you're stuck in a teeny tiny little box. And I don't really get the design decision behind that. And also, I'm also trying to think of the more casual players who want to spend their time in the gen room because that's what they really enjoy doing more than focusing on the flag play. I just think there's really little drawback to at least giving us some sort of space in the base to play with. And this is a bit of a tough one because I know it's tough to go back and like redesign these maps. It's certainly viable. But yeah, I guess I'm like curious if we could talk to Scott or one of the map designers, like why did they make the decision to have every single gen room be so tiny and so cramped? I don't know. Any thoughts on this?
I know, like
Well,
on
it's not just
DX,
that, it's where they are, right? You've got Torment, where that gen room is like such a pain to get to, as well as it being cramped. It does make some of the maps very inconsistent from that perspective.
That's one of the better gen rooms in my opinion, because at least there's some space to work with.
It's hard to get to.
Yeah, it can be hard to get to.
You need those gen room routes.
I'm talking to Britney Spears, who's probably never been in a gen room in his life.
2 or 3 times, I think.
Yeah.
I'll make a gen room route video.
It's only viable for that one map. I don't know. I don't know. Any thoughts? I feel like it's not a very controversial opinion. I feel like pretty much everyone would appreciate having at least some indoor gameplay.
Is the idea here that you go into the gen room and you can effectively duel rather than it just being a splash out? Is that kind of what we're going for?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't see a negative side to it.
Yeah, I think JP did a video recently where I don't know if he did this in a video, but he was doing this on stream where he was like looking at different gen rooms between Ascend and T3. And you can't shoot the ceiling of the gen room without taking splash damage in T3.
On any map.
Pretty sure.
Okay. All right.
Most at least.
We can continue. Actually, I brought this up. Unstable posted some screenshots of some of the indoor environments. All right, let's move on. Give kill credits for recalled suicides. Good one by Fire. As always, little good quality of life suggestions. Not a hill that I would die on or really care about in the end personally, but it seems good. Let's keep going. Allow plasma and grenade launcher slot. Yeah, this kind of comes back to what we talked about earlier. It just seems weird that the plasma is in the secondary slot for heavy armor, but in the first slot for medium armor. It's really hard to imagine any medium armors wanting to choose the plasma over a disc. I agree. I certainly agree with this one.
Absolutely. Even just the damage of the thing, right? I think it's about 390, I think, for a direct or something like that. And so the rate of fire is good. The speed of the projectile is not bad, but I just don't see it displacing my disc. And I don't think it does much extra damage against base assets, which historically has been what the plasma gun's designed to do. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's placed in the game yet.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if someone comes out and just is actually sick with the plasma gun and we're all idiots, but yeah, I certainly agree with this. It should be in the grenade launcher slot.
So the argument,
it's easier than a disc though.
It shoots a lot faster. Theory, you know what? This is actually exactly 100% related to the previous post. Plasma gun in Tribes 1 was only really ever used and really ever good in arena, because you're in a small arena and it shoots at a faster rate and it doesn't have, it's more, yeah, it's just much better in that environment, but we don't really have that kind of arena to use the plasma gun. This one is the ever-present conversation in Tribes 3 ever since a certain patch some time ago. A Of course, it is. Our projectile speed's too fast. At this point, I've gone back and forth. At one point, it was like, okay, Erez isn't going to budge on this. He feels like projectiles need to be faster for newer players. It's the only way to make tribes accessible to newbies. However, I think Drizzle has the reins of the game now. So, like, at one point, I'm like, okay, let's just stop even trying because it's never going to get changed. But now that Drizzle is here and we have, for instance, respawn timer is now 2 seconds, which is something that also we thought was never going to get changed. I feel like this conversation is still worth having. I don't want to beat a dead horse. We've already talked about it in every single patch review since the projectile speed changes happened. But do we all still agree projectile speed's too fast?
Yes,
no.
and
I think
No?
and that's coming from a mid-air
Ooh.
perspective.
Wriggles with a controversial opinion.
My reasoning behind that is yes, close range dueling. It's quite strong, and that's how it should be, right? It should be a danger to be up close and personal in someone's face to get a kill. Like that should have consequence, which faster speeds makes happen. Now, the caveat to that is also longer shots, right? So the longer shots are a little bit easier to hit because faster projectile speed. Does it make midair long shots a little bit easier? Sure, but you still have to have the wherewithal to make that shot. I don't think the speeds are too fast. I think they're fine where they're at, mainly because after having played with it for so long, yes, there's people that got aim. But I feel like it's in a good spot where it's fast enough to feel familiar to those of us that used to play it or played tribes in previous, also fast enough to where a new player can pick up on it pretty fast.
Technitar has an interesting perspective coming from the T2 perspective. They think that the projectiles have to be fast in T3 because players move so much faster than they did in T2.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to hint at. It was like, in terms of speed. Now, yes, it is harder to dodge a close range disc in T3 compared to T1. But like I said, that kind of goes back to the caveat. It shouldn't being up in someone's face be risky and shouldn't be easily dodgeable. Yes, you can still dodge in T3 if you utilize your cubes properly. But if you take the risk of floating in midair, that's your choice to make that risk. So you're setting yourself up for that midair that someone's going to land because the projectiles just are faster. But I think in terms of scale though too, it's pretty hard to hit a long range midair, man. I'm talking like half across the map, and that's even with.
I think the way that I would think about this is what is the objective of having the projectile speeds lower? And if I understand correctly, the idea is that in the right hands, that fast projectile speed has a 100% hit rate. Then it's why should they be faster? And the benefit of faster projectiles is newer players are able to pick up the game and get mid-airs. And I think the question that will need to be answered is, can we slow the projectiles down enough to make a spin fuser in the hands of Jagol less effective
No.
in fire and players like that? Are we able to slow it enough so that it's not as effective in their hands without lowering it so much that it ruins the benefits of having higher projectile speed? And I think that is a tricky thing to get. And the answer might be no, right? The answer might be like reducing fires, talking about in 120 meters per second, which is something that I've heard other people say too. But the question is, is that like how much is that 20 meters per second going to do? I'm not opposed to it. I'm just thinking, yeah, that's how I would frame it.
Look at your top tier. Your Jagols and that are going to adapt in a couple days, and they'll be just as deadly as they were before, I think. What difference does that make? It just might take the expert players a little bit longer to get to that skill ceiling, because that's all you're really doing there. You're increasing the skill ceiling by dropping the projectile speed or reducing hitboxes or whichever mechanism you want to do there. But yeah, honestly, I haven't heard too many people complaining about this a lot. Maybe because we all gave up and stopped caring. But yeah, I don't see it making a huge difference to the game now.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to. I'm not like, if the objective is to make it easier for defense against the highest skill level, or what offense doesn't get dicked down when they're slower. I don't know if that ultimately, what you're saying, Doc, actually will. I think it's just a matter of time before people get to that skill level.
Yeah, look, I'm in the same headspace here of I think at this point in the game, I don't think it makes sense to like nerf it by 30-40%. Go down to mid-air speeds or T2 speeds or whatever. I'd take it. I'd take anything though. If it's 140 meters per second, let's try 135 meters per second and just see how it feels. I think the fundamental issue that people have with the speed is not really as much getting hit from with the super long mid airs, because you actually do have some player autonomy to dodge that potentially in theory. I think it's more the close range duels. Hitting mid airs feels so trivial, and it feels like there is very little autonomy that players have to actually dodge a disc. But I guess then to Brittany's point, how slow would it have to be with the current physics for you to be able to actually dodge a disc? I don't know the answer to that. Right now, frankly, like chasers use the disc in the in a way that people used to use the chain gun in previous Tribes games. You don't even use your chain gun half the time when you're chasing. You're actually just going for mid airs, which is very unique to this game. And I will channel APC as well, who in the past, whenever we talk about chain gun, he's like, look, it's better that we have a game where chain gun is underpowered and discs are overpowered. It's more fun this way. And I do agree with that sentiment to an extent as well.
I do too.
Yeah, it's more to the spirit of the game.
Okay. It feels like the sentiment has at the very minimum, people have been beaten down on this a bit and have stopped complaining about it. But it feels like sentiment, and I could be speaking out of my ass, but it feels like sentiment has slowly changed, at least to an extent, that the disc speed is okay. And maybe we'd like to see it brought down, but it's not. When it first got changed, people were like, the game is dead. This is a fake Tribes game. And I don't think people necessarily feel like that anymore.
Yeah, I just think if it is a change that's going to be made, it needs to be made as soon as possible. I imagine that we could see some like newer players that are playing pubs who are used to this speed, and then when it gets nerfed, they have a hard time hitting, and they might not want to play as
Can
much.
you imagine the feedback forums after that patch? People are going to fucking
Yeah.
riot. So many newer
Yeah.
players are going to be like, the disc feels horrible now. I can't hit anything.
Yeah. So I feel like it needs to happen as soon as humanly possible if it is going to happen. Yeah. I also think something that I still think would be good is to have a projectile speed slider in custom games, because then we could start playing around that in comp and see, is there actually, we're all theorizing that there would be this difference at 120, but maybe there's not, right? Maybe in a month we're all adapted and it's literally the same.
People would though, like, because I remember when there was an awful lot of complaining about floatiness and stuff like that. There was a gravity slider, and Ares kept saying, "Go play with it and tell us what it should be." But people want to play pugs and actually enjoy the game. So I'm not sure if there was a slider for that kind of stuff if it get used.
Yeah, I think
Because if they change the projectile speed, it will take an adaptation, right? The first game where you change that, everyone's going to be like, "I can't hit shit." Give it a few days, and you'll be back to where you were, right? I'm not sure if people are going to just try a pug with a different projectile speed.
This is neither here nor there, but one thing, Brittany, you were talking about, I think yesterday, is how sick would it be if we could save different mutator presets? Because I think right now you have to set the presets every single time you do a pug.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have a mutator for disabling the outpost. I don't think anyone's actually disabling it. We just ignore the outpost. I don't think anyone's actually disabling stealth. We just don't use it. It would be sick to be able to create a comp. What's up?
Like, apparently, if you even open the settings panel, apparently, like, it changes the health of deployable turrets or some shit.
Oh,
Does anyone know about this?
I don't know.
Yeah,
about
it
this.
does. Yeah,
so
they get
even if
super
you
OP.
open that settings panel to before you even touch anything, it messes up with, it makes deployable turrets like 3 times as strong.
Let's report that bug if it hasn't been reported already. Okay, I think we're getting through the bulk of the recent controversial posts. I think one that I do definitely want to talk about, though, is the flag throw physics. In my opinion, the flag changes in this patch were the most exciting and best aspect of the new patch. If you weren't aware, essentially, flag tossing inherits your speed, much more of your speed, if not all of your speed. I'm not sure if it's 100% inheritance or not. Drizzle can maybe confirm. However, to balance against that, tossing, I guess, did the strength of tossing actually change as well from static? I think tossing strength from static has been reduced a tiny bit. It does feel like there's also some drag. I don't know if I'm just hallucinating this, but like you could basically chuck the flag a lot better at close ranges. And yes, throwing the flag at far ranges is maybe a bit too strong, but right now it feels so much more intuitive, so much cleaner, so much easier to toss the flag between teammates than it ever did before. If you're moving quickly, you can actually toss the flag and have a good idea of where it's going to go because it inherits most, if not all, of your speed. Oh, throw is no different. Okay. And it has a bit of air resistance. Yeah. Okay. However, the question is throwing too strong. I guess that's my question. Do you guys feel like the changes were positive with inheritance? We'll start there. And then is throwing a bit too strong, I think, is a big question. And I also want chat to chime in on this. I'm curious to hear what people think.
I think
you're doing the most, Dawson. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Fish, you already know how I feel about this. We had a lot of fun the other night. Dell got into a custom match and literally was just like passing the flag around for a while. And we were like little kids. Like it was so fun. I think that what I was saying before, I think a meta could emerge where you literally run it back to front and immediately chuck the flag and it goes stand to stand. You just have your other capper K out. Like they have enough time. Your other capper has enough time to K out, get to stand, catch, and cap. And I think that could be bad, but I think it's really fun. It feels more natural to pass now. I think it's great. We'll see.
So
I
because
like tossing, man. We always shouted out as casters esports anytime it happened, right? It's just
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
So Drizzle confirmed that the flag now has 100% inheritance and the throw is no different than it was before, but the flag does have an air resistance coefficient so that the longer it's in the air, the more it slows down, if I understand that correctly. Maybe we keep the flag throw strength how it is and the inheritance how it is, but we just experiment more. And I'm doing a little wink towards Drizzle with the resistance piece because everyone likes being able to effectively toss the flag from player to player. Everyone likes being able to predict where the flag is going, even if you're moving at quick speeds, which this 100% inheritance enables. But maybe what's too strong is the base to base tossing. So the variable we can play with is actually the drag coefficient. Perhaps. Just a thought. I'm a game designer now.
I'd say it's in a good spot. I think, and I hate saying it because punting is so iconic to TA, right? And like how flag physics work in this version of Tribes. But I feel like if we didn't have punt, it would be more balanced, being too strong. Because the flag drag on it is really good. And like I was fucking around earlier, just throwing flags from like stand to stand on, I don't know, like a 180, 200 entry exit. And it would get, I mean, if I threw from a quarter the way in front of the base, it would get to, I don't know, 3/4 almost full way. But once it hits that drag like cap, it just falls straight down, which is good.
Honestly, I like punting because it looks cool, it feels cool. It gives you a little bit more agency and player autonomy. That said, it is extremely easy to punt now. It used to be pretty difficult to punt when you weren't sure where the flag was going to come out because of inheritance issues. Now that it's more predictable, you can punt almost 100% of the time, even at odd angles.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a bit too strong with punting, but I'd rather just, again, play with the air resistance coefficient than remove punting just because I think punting is cool. But that's just me. But yeah, I tend to agree with you, Wriggles. If punting wasn't in the game, it probably wouldn't feel too strong at all. Okay, were there any other feedback threads that you guys saw that you wanted to touch on? Any other thoughts?
I'm not sure if it's a feedback thread, but I'd like to see if people want to have a discussion about custom crosshairs. So there are players in the game that are like making an overlay on their screen for mortar ranges and stuff like that. Is this something we want to see in the game? I'm not sure if there was a post about this already.
Yeah. I think I've been using crosshair overlay and just turning crosshairs off. And I find just having a single solitary dot for me personally is enough. Just kind of know where my center screen is, and then the rest of it's off feel.
I think that the overlay for distances could be achieved whether or not you can remove the crosshair, because you could just create an overlay that goes straight over the mortal crosshair that has the meter ranges for the notches. Like
Well,
the
that's what
cat's
people
out of
are
the
doing
bag.
already. People are doing that already.
Yeah, exactly. But oh, you mean should it be like banned in comp kind of thing?
No, more like if people are doing that, is it something that it'd be just nicer to get some native integration for?
Oh yeah, like different
Oh, I see.
crosshairs would be nice. Yes, I agree.
I think that would be cool to have native integration. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I really
mean,
like being able to make.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about crosshairs. I just use the defaults. Yeah, it's not a big deal to me, but I guess give people more options is a good thing.
My
Has
smooth
anyone-
brain can't.
Has anyone experimented with chaff grenade yet?
Not much.
I've experimented with getting hit by it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it being used much, if at all.
Chaff grenade has been banned until the bug with them is fixed. I just saw that in the
Oh.
T3 comp Discord.
bug is-
I don't know what the bug is. I'm not
It
familiar.
persists. So if
Oh.
I understand correctly, like it happened to me the other day where I just had no IFFs. I don't know if it was for the rest of the game, but it was for a very long time. Certain
Oh,
players'
yeah.
IFFs weren't showing up.
I have seen that. I saw 2 bugs yesterday. One was that where there's just like players running around with no indicators, and it was on dry dock. There were players in the lake on the right hand side, depending which side you're looking at, that we couldn't kill. They weren't bots, I don't think, but they were running around in the water, and it's like the splash damage wasn't working when they were in the water. It only seemed to happen to certain players though. It was really weird. I don't know if anyone's seen that.
No,
No.
I have not. I have not. Okay, guys, we could just keep going and going, but I don't know. I'm really happy with a lot of the changes we saw. Shotgun got a much needed nerf. Flag tossing got a much needed buff. Respawning feels much better than it has before. I think force fields are an interesting addition to the game. I feel like they could use some balance, and I want to see medium armor get a little bit of love. To even just giving it a Nova Cult, I think would make a big difference, but potentially additional love for the medium would be awesome. And I think we're moving in a great direction. I think the biggest thing I want beyond all of this is just more maps. Honestly, it's been a while since we got a new map. What was the most recent one? Was it? Oh, it's Rain Dance, right? Most tribes games, there's, I don't know, like what, 6 to 8 maps that people actually like and play consistently. I feel like right now we're pretty close to that. Pretty much you can hear the groan, the collective groan whenever Wave Mist comes up in the pickup game. So a couple more maps to add to the spice would be fantastic. Any other thoughts or final comments before we wrap this thing up?
Fire just said his big thing is increase medium heavy collision sizes.
I'm saying this even as a capper. Like, I'd rather see body blocking get a bit of a buff than the force field be overpowered and be the way that you stop cappers. I think body blocking has been a staple of pretty much every single tribes game, and it's challenging to say the least to do in this game. And this, I don't know, it seems like this should be an easy thing to do. It's just make the heavy hitbox a little bit bigger.
I'm not sure if making the hitbox bigger will fix the problem though, because as a capper, if I'm going like, let's say 300 or collision box, if I'm going like 300, I just bounce off. And I'm not sure if it's because I hit the edge of the collision box or if it's the behavior of hitting the collision box itself. But yeah, I'm not sure what the problem is. I wonder if maybe it's not even a size problem. It's like a physics problem or collision box interaction problem.
Yeah, Fire just sent me an image. I suppose this is light, medium, and heavy. And is the inner pill, like, if you hit the inner pill, is this like a hard BB that just like stops you entirely, and the outer pill is like a deflection kind of thing? Is that what this is? I'm not really sure what I'm looking at, but
I don't think we see the post Fire.
blue is collision, red is hitbox. I see. Gotcha. Yeah, body blocks are fun and satisfying gameplay mechanic, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm for it.
fixed it.
Cool.
They better fix it.
All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks to my co-hosts. Is that what I call you guys? Doc Matrix, Wriggles, and Brittany Spears. Dell on top.
Loose term.
L on top.
Dell on top. I feel like I should
Yeah,
add for
so-
pugs. What's up?
Just one more thing, please,
Uh-huh.
spectator mode. The amount
Yeah.
of scrims and organized matches we're getting now, I'd love to be casting them, and it would be so good to be able to cast them properly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait for spectator mode. Literally, the patch you give us spectator mode, we are going to do tournaments. I guarantee
Yeah.
you there will be tournaments the first patch that we have spectator mode, because I'm going to be the one hosting it. Because if no one else does, I will be hosting a tournament. You can mark my words. I am just waiting for that spectator mode. So hopefully it's on the way and has at least all the features that we need at a minimum to make it work. Yeah, thanks for
Do you
reminding me
reckon-
of that.
Do you reckon the new map's going to be a remake or a original IP?
I think he said it was original.
It's original. We have a name for it already. It's in the roadmap thingy that they posted.
Moonrise or
Yeah, but Wave Mist is an original, but it's basically Crossfire, right?
Yeah.
When I hear Moonrise, I think of the moon map, and we'll see.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Everyone who followed, we got some gifted subs today. Appreciate that as well. Everyone who followed, subscribe to YouTube. Thank you. I will be posting this up on YouTube, so look out for that. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for joining me, guys. I will see you next time. Peace out.
Bye bye.
Bye.